All right, let's try this again. What's happening, everybody? All right, so talking density altitude tonight. Had a little bit of a situation come up, so I had to kill the chat, start it back over. So anyway, wanted to talk to you guys about density altitude, how it pertains to racing, how it pertains to you, and why it's so important that you keep up with this type of stuff. Because comparing my time to your time isn't necessarily going to be fair, especially considering the fact that, well, I live at sea level. And because I live at sea level, my ET is by nature going to be pretty good because I live at the standard that everybody tries to get to, which is in some cases, especially when it's cool outside, that 0 DA mark, and even into negative DA, which is to say that the conditions are better than you can hope for. So 1320's checking in. What up, man? Got the arm flex. But that just means basically, let me tell you what density altitude really is. It's more of a way to judge how much oxygen is in the air based on known existing values. So based on known existing values, the density altitude, you could be standing at 0 altitude, but because it's hot, muggy, lots of humidity displacing the oxygen in the air, all of that kicks up your actual density altitude. In other words, there's less oxygen available for use. So that's why you have those density altitude correction factors. But the problem with that comes in the fact that you end up with a situation that isn't necessarily fair. I'll give you a perfect example of that is if you live in a very high altitude, let's say 2,000 feet, which is a fairly common, fairly high altitude, but it's not like Denver, Colorado or something like that, 5,000 feet. Let's just talk about 2,000 feet because it's a very relative number to where I live. So last night, I went to the drag strip. Here's one of the passes, 1049 at about 130 miles an hour. Really, I should have been launching a little bit harder too, by the way. And here's another one, 1048 at about the same mile an hour, a little over 130 miles an hour. Pretty typical for that car. But the DA was roughly, let's say 1,700 feet because the track would show, 1,700 feet, 1,650, and then drag times was showing like 2,100 feet. So there was a little bit of a disconnect, and there always is, between DA calculators. But I'm just going to go with 1,700 feet because it helps the conversation along with that 2,000 foot versus sea level thing that we're talking about. So if I am at 2,000 feet, let's just for sake of purposes here, if I'm at 1,700 feet, Dr. Diff is in. Let's see. Dr. Diff is now a moderator. If I'm talking about my density altitude being 1,700 feet, but I am at sea level, which is roughly where I live, that means that I have the same amount of oxygen that is available to somebody at 1,700 feet under these specified conditions, which is like 60 degrees or 70 degrees. Actually it's zero humidity. There's a lot of things that go into this calculation, right? But you have to have standards, and those are the standards. So my DA means that it's hot outside, it's muggy, it's just kind of gross. But if you live at 2,000 feet, your 1,700 foot DA is going to be very cool weather, probably somewhere in the 40 degree range. It's going to be low humidity, very crisp, all that kind of good stuff. So what does that mean? Well, it means that my car could potentially be going into a hot spark table, and you start getting these spark modifiers. And this is why the comparison of DAs is really, it gets a little shady. So my 1,700 foot DA, again, it's going to be about 85 degrees, muggy, kind of funky outside. Not a lot of not a lot of oxygen available, mainly due to humidity. Humidity sucks, especially for supercharged cars. So anyway, getting back to it, when I'm saying my DA is 1,700 feet, I could be getting into a hot spark table. You got spark modifiers based on inlet air temperature, manifold temperature. You've got engine coolant temperature that's also going to play into these spark modifiers. A hot spark table will start to drop the timing, which means the car is just going to make less power. It's trying to work against some spark knock, potential spark knock issues. That's why those parameters are in there. Whereas somebody that lives at 2,000 feet, because they're dealing with crisp, cool air at their 1,700 feet, they're potentially going to be in their cold spark tables. In other words, their car could be adding timing. You could be in a situation with several different spark modifiers that are trying to add timing to the car, so it's going to be making more power. So you've got a car that's optimizing a tune, and you've got another car that's kind of mitigating a tune. Think about it. If you had the cars both on equal playing field, obviously the car that's trying to throw timing at itself, mosquitoes, the car that's trying to throw timing at the situation is going to be making more power, assuming that the air can accommodate for it. So there's typically going to be some kind of a fudge factor, but hey, CFL, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause. But the main thing is that when we're talking about DA for the Hellcats, give you a perfect example, for about every 1,000 feet, I can expect to lose or gain about a tenth and about a mile an hour. So my car has been as quick as a 1019, and that was at like 134, 135 miles an hour. And it kind of falls in line with that because it was, depending on which density altitude calculator you want to go with, it does kind of fall in line with that. And also too, as those temperatures are dropping, the car is going to start to try to throw more timing at it, and it's going to make even more money, even more power, and really getting my money's worth out of that tune. So again, that's where that shift starts to take place, and that's one of the reasons why you go with about a tenth and about a mile an hour, but just know that as it cools off even farther, you could pick up even more. Which brings me to my next set of possible issues with density altitude and how that kind of stuff can be gamed. You can actually game DA to say, I could easily say, hey man, my car runs 1016. Well, that's not exactly true. The car has run a 1016, but last night it ran high 1040s, low 1050s. Well, so a DA correction would say somewhere around 1030s, which makes pretty good sense because, again, the car has run at 0 DA, mid 1020s. So, the calculator's not exactly that far off. And really the differences in timing, fueling, and things like that are more or less within the noise of that 1030 range. In other words, a tenth either way. So just to recap, the main thing to look at when we're talking about density altitude and comparing density altitude from one part of the country to the next, you've got to know your base altitude that we're talking about, and you've got to know how that change in altitude and DA combined will affect your car. And again, how do you game the system? Well, the Demon is the best example of that, where the Demon, when it went in 965, they were gaming the system to the point where it was almost, if I'm being honest, unethical. Not illegal, but certainly questionable in terms of honesty. Let's look at it like this. Back in the day, I remember in the back of every Motor Trend magazine, Car and Driver magazine, you would have a list of cars that went back maybe a couple of years, and you would see a quarter mile ET as tested and then corrected. The corrected number was the one that you always looked at because of reasons. They could have been testing it in different parts of the country, different times of the year, and you have to have a barometer for which to judge your results. You have to basically have an anchor for all of your results, because without it, it doesn't tell the whole tale. Well, this is kind of what happened with the Demon. The Demon was run in like negative 2,500 DA or something like that. I've even heard numbers like negative 3,000. Okay, well, let's talk about negative 2,500, because negative 3,000, that's really hard to come by. Keeping in mind that there are very few places on the planet that can even claim that kind of number at any given time, much less those with drag strips and stuff like that. But negative 2,500, I've seen that only a couple of times, and negative 2,000 I've seen several times, and negative 1,500 is pretty commonplace down here. But we're going to go with this negative 2,500 number just because it seems to start up all the time. If you take that number at face value, take the 965, and you start applying the formula, 65, 75, 85, 90. It's really a 990 car. And so you go, well, that's kind of messed up. Why would they claim 965 if it's really a 990 car? Well, because marketing, they wanted to put that out there. And yes, the car did run the number, and here's your time slip. But it was run, it was a 100% delete car. In other words, rear seat delete, passenger seat delete, friggin' wedding vegetables delete. You had Leah Pritchett driving the thing, which is, 130 pound at the most girl driving this thing. So you had a weight reduction just there alone, obviously with the skinnies and all the rest of that on a very well prepared track, on the minimum amount of fuel I'm sure that they could possibly run and get away with. And on, just a continuous chain of runs that they were doing to try to get this thing down. In other words, it was optimized in optimized conditions with optimized track, with an optimized track at their disposal. And it went 965. So that's a way to game the system. Now, in the real world, 990, well, that's kind of what they run in 0DA. It's been evidenced by pretty much every Demon owner out there that, yeah, the car will run 9s in 0DA, which is perfectly fine. It'll run a little bit quicker and a little bit more negative DA. 970s, Ray's, as far as I'm concerned, Ray's got the record, and that's just all there is to it. Twice in a row, by the way. And that's a 978 with a guy driving the car. You got to figure, you pulling 70 pounds out of the car just in the fact that it's a girl driving it. Look, those numbers start to make, the numbers are important, okay? And that's why when you start really digging down and getting to the nth degree of this kind of stuff, you can pick this thing apart and go, okay, well, we got 990, got to the 990 mark just on the actual DA correction calculator, dragging this thing back up. And I'm just using 2,500 feet here, which, I've even heard worse deal, but then you got the 70-pound difference, typical 70-pound difference between, a girl and a guy. Normal guy in the States weighs around 200 pounds. Normal girl weighs about 130 pounds. So, you get that 70-pound, maybe half a tenth in there. Now you're talking 995. This thing is still on paper a 9-second car. And I guess that's really more to the point here. Who cares about 965 versus 995? It's still a 9, okay? So, talk about overselling and under-delivering. Well, that's where that DA game, and that's where those conditions can be gamed. So when you hear about these guys that are running these obscenely absurd numbers, and you're going, God, there's no way, I can't believe it. I've got all this money tied up in my car, and this guy's smoking me by 2 or 3 tenths. What gives? What's the deal? A lot of times it's just somebody basically gaming conditions and not divulging the fact that, maybe they ran the car in, negative 1,700 DA with a really well-prepped track. Next thing you know, they're dropping numbers that don't even make sense. Well, they make sense only in the fact that you have to be there on that track on that day in those conditions. Then yeah, it'll run it. But that's why I like to talk about my car in terms of a 0DA. Like people are like, what does your car run? 1030s, 1040s. And that is what it runs. But then I go out and I crack a 1020 and they're like, you're sandbagging. No, man, it's just you ran into a night that had some really good air and the car picked up a little bit. But, I don't claim that my car is a 10-teen car, even though it went 10 teens. Don't see anybody else doing that, by the way. At least not with stock boost and a 309 on 93 octane. Anyway, y'all know where I'm coming from though. And the main thing is that I want to make sure that, you know, when we're talking about what the car runs and density altitudes and things like that, what all of that means. So, and I can't remember if it was this video or the one that I was just on a minute ago, where I was explaining really what density altitude means, or, you know, what it is, aside from just, you know, you don't need to know how the clock works. You just need to know what time it is, right? But to be able to put things into perspective, that's why I wanted to talk about 2,000 feet versus sea level. But to get into what density altitude is just a measurement of how much available oxygen is in the atmosphere, how much of that oxygen is free to use to make horsepower. Obviously, the higher the elevation is, means that there's less available oxygen for you to work with. So, you know, if we're talking about hot conditions, we're talking about humid conditions, we're talking about low barometric pressure conditions, all of those three conditions are what can, well, if they're low, are going to be detriments to power. If they're higher, then the car is going to make more power. It's going to run better. So, again, you know, when I ran those the high 1040s, low 1050s, you know, I'm going to say density altitude is 1,700. Some were saying 2,000 plus and whatever details. We're talking really humid, really sticky. We had a bunch of these Billy Badass storms that have been blowing through here. We had hail the day before. So, yeah, that'll give you an idea as far as the conditions that we ran in. And on an old tank, a Exxon 93 octane, she was cracking off some decent times. And again, let me grab one of these off the floor. They just fell down. This was that 1049 pass. If you DA correct these, they're still in the 30s, which is, again, about right, considering that in cooler weather, I probably wouldn't have been in a little bit, I've been in a little bit less of a hot spark table, and the car would have just been running a little bit better. So, oh yeah, and to that point, so I tried to data log, and I don't know what is up with HP tuners right now, but I downloaded the latest beta version, which can sometimes be unstable, and it pissed off my scanner to the point that I couldn't really, it was only able to read about half the parameters I was trying to read. So I killed that beta version, deleted it, loaded what is known as a known, you know, a vetted version. And even that one wasn't working. So I got to get a hold of HP tuners and find out what the deal is with that. Talk about annoying. But let me catch up with you guys real quick. Speed Freak saying, hey B, tuning question. When mods are done, does the tuner modify the stock tune or write a complete new tune before starting the car? Trying to understand how this happens. Let me make sure I understand the question correctly. Tuner modify the stock tune. Okay. So the tuner will modify the stock tune. What most will do is, it depends on the mods that are done to the car. A lot of tuners will have a known base file. So you'll have your stock tune, and this is assuming the tuner has tuned this particular car before. And this is kind of running with the assumption that they did, because at this stage of the game, most of the tuners that you talk to are going to be kind of specialized. But they'll start off with a base tune that will have some of the modifications in the tune accounted for. Let me say, some of the modifications for the car accounted for in the tune, and those parameters will be modified to best support the modifications that are on the car. But it's not, it shouldn't be, I should say, a final analysis. In other words, it's not clickety, clickety, click, load, and you're done. Every one of these cars is a little bit different. Take it from me, and especially the Mopars. These things, every Mopar is a snowflake, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. They're all just a little bit different. There's running operating system changes. Anyway, long story short, he'll fire the car up, and then he's going to start to check things out a little bit. If he's on a Mustang dyno or a loaded dyno, he's going to start putting the car through its paces with that base file. He's going to be looking for fuel trims. He's going to be looking for any short-term knock. He's going to be looking for basically everything that air, fuel, obviously, but you're going to be looking for things that are going to jump off the page at you. So let's say you've got a perfect example of this: long tube headers. You're going to fire the car up, and he's going to sit there and stare at short-term fuel trims for a minute. And if he sees this thing throwing fuel at one of the banks, he's going to know he's got an exhaust leak. Cut it and chalk it immediately at that point. Get the car off the dyno, fix the exhaust leak, because at that point, all data is corrupt that he gets, and you're not going to be able to actually make educated changes to the tune if you've got bad data coming into it because of an exhaust leak. So that'll give you an idea as far as, there are some, and also fueling like with injectors, injector data, things like that. All of that, these are kind of known values, but you're still going to treat it as though it's a custom tune every single time. I know that Alex will spend, this is Alex Pites, Alex will spend an obnoxious amount of time on known value cars just to get it just right. And I can tell you that it will not be the same tune from one to the next with the exact same mods. Again, each one acts a little bit differently. The conditions are a little bit different. Fuel quality can be a little bit different from station to station. All of these minor little details, well, that can add up to a lot of minor little changes that need to take place in the tune. You'd be surprised, by the way, of how many issues can come from just fuel quality alone. Somebody gets gas from the same, like say HEB down the street from where they live, and let's say that HEB gas is amazing. It's astonishing gas. And let's say this other guy gets gas at, some kind of brand X place, and that gas is not all that great. One tune will not work the same as the other tune with that type of a condition. And I mean, that'll make a difference in timing values, fueling timing, all of that can be affected by that. So hopefully that answers the question. It's not really a catch-all, but you're always going to start with a stock tune. You'll have a base file that you'll have known values with, but then you're going to really start diving into that tune afterwards. At least you should. Let's see. Some Ferrari guy saying Ford is announcing the Mach 1 after the GT40 stops production. That is correct. They said it will be most track-focused Mustang ever. Very cool. Question is, why not continue the GT350? Also seems like they are done making drag cars. So here's the thing. I don't even know what that means about the Mach 1, because to me, the GT350 is already there. If they're going to talk about the most track-focused whatever, Mach 1 was never a track car. I mean, it just didn't ever have a place. And so, and not like Shelby GT350. I mean, that name is synonymous with SCCA racing from back then. So I don't know, man. I wish I could tell you, but to me, it just seems like it's a little bit weird. But I don't know. We'll see what they end up doing with the car. Cyrus is asking, can I be a mod? Possibly. Circle back around on that. Dr. Diff saying, what up, man? 1320J saying, I live at 6,100 feet. I love driving my Scat Pack at low elevation. So much more fun. Yeah, so, I mean, you got to remember, guys, I mean, at 6,100 feet, to give you an idea, in aviation speak, for every 1,000 feet that you go up in altitude, you lose 3% of your power for a naturally aspirated engine, okay? Well, this is a Roots supercharger, or I'm sorry, a positive displacement supercharger. It acts a lot just like a big naturally aspirated engine. It's not like a turbo where you can hang that thing at a certain amount of manifold pressure, and as long as you've got an adequate pump, it will maintain that manifold pressure regardless of altitude. It's why turbos do so well at altitude. But for every 1,000 feet, you lose 3% of your power. So in essence, your Scat Pack is down 18% versus what it would be making down here, roughly 80 horsepower difference. And that's just kind of how the math works out. It's crazy, isn't it? Boondoggy saying, hey, Mr. B, got the fist bump. I like it. Again, CFL James, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Kevin saying, hey, Mason, is there much difference between the 306 LSD and the 309 LSD rear end performance, and is it worth swapping for a 309? Not really. I mean, the 306 housing, I think, is a little bit smaller, but I wouldn't worry about that part of it, especially if you're running street tires. Don't worry about it at all. As long as it's limited slip, you're good. Boondock is saying, look at the DA. The Demon ran its halo time like what, sub-zero? Yeah, it was like minus 2,500 at least. Destroyer 1320 saying, I'm happy to help moderate in the future. That was some bullshit level 10, dude. That was 10 times 10. Sorry to see them ruin your feed. I was into your info. Hope to see you soon. No, for sure, man. In fact, see you on here a lot, bro. Hang on. Light. Sometimes it'll let me do it. Sometimes it won't. Hang on. I'll get you in on that, though, Destroyer, for sure. Yeah, that's fucking ignorant shit, man. I hate that shit. It's worse than you know, man. Shawnee is saying 700-foot density altitude today, 12 mile an hour, cool tailwind at 55 degrees. A damn good day for almost June. Absolutely. Well, up there in Minnesota, brother, yeah, you guys get some nice air this time of year. This guy's saying, yo, Chrome Dummy, port your blower. No, not on this car. As a matter of fact, it's not going to happen on this car either. Porting the blower, it helps the more boost that you're making. And really, I'm only making, what, 10.5, 11.5 pounds of boost. It's just not going to yield any real results. Now, that being said, if I were to pulley the car, it might be on the list of mods to do, but you know, the problem is that that's one of those mods that you only see the benefits at the drag strip. You're not going to feel the difference. So, you know, if you were gunning for a number, yeah, maybe. And if somebody shows up and runs like a 1009 with a ported blower on stock boost with a 309 gear, yeah, I might have to crack that ass. But the reality is that, no, not really. Not really interested in doing it. Plus, I don't know, it requires effort on my part, and that's a lot to ask for right now. Shawnee's saying, I ran the Hellcat in full weight in above average condition today, 4,600 pounds, 1045 and 135 miles an hour. Shawnee, man, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Oh, Shawnee's got some good info. Saying incognito, no tune, lower pulley Charger Hellcat came within a whisker of blowing up his motor today, trapping 119, 122 all day, detonating all the way down the track on 91 octane. Thankfully, he quit after 2 runs. So what I want to talk about when it comes to that is, so good lead in, by the way, Sean. And I don't want to get into that. It looks like Ken said, never underestimate the driver mod. Still struggling with the whole shot and feeding the gas pedal. Not as easy as it looks. Ken, by the way, on these passes, just to let you know, I'm going to give you a quick pointer before I go into Sean's deal. Like, here's that 10.48. Look at my 60 foot. I don't know if it'll come up. 1568. Hang on. Hopefully it shows up right there. That's a 1568 60 foot. That is with me easing into the throttle. I'm not just light switching the throttle. The idea, and this is what I want you to practice. I want you to practice walking. I know this is kind of weird. Just go for a walk. Walk, walk for about maybe 20 feet. Walk around the garage or the parking lot or whatever outside. And it's the heel toe cadence. This is the cadence, just like that. Heel toe, step, heel toe, step, heel toe. That's the cadence. That. I want that rhythm. That. That's the rhythm of rolling into the throttle. When you see the green, that's the first dut. Actually, it's the third yellow, but you know what I'm talking about. And that's your cadence. That'll help you get out of the hole with your car. And again, it takes practice. You need to play with it, have some fun with it, but that'll get you where you need to be. Now, Sean, let me get back to that comment. So when we're talking about density, altitude, and that available oxygen, this is where that whole incognito thing can really turn around and bite you in the ass. And I mean, not in a fun kind of way. The issue is available oxygen here. So if you live at 6,000 feet or even 2,000 feet for that matter, you are at a significant oxygen deficit by way of altitude. Well, if you put a smaller pulley up top or a larger pulley down low, you can make up some of that lack of oxygen just by spinning the blower harder and making more boost. Because believe it or not, at those altitudes, you're also not making the boost that you would make down here at sea level. So take that a step farther though. And by the way, it would work at that point because the airflow tables in the stock Hellcat tune will get you to a place where, or at least it will accommodate a place that pulley would get you to in most conditions. However, and this is the big however, and Sean was a key witness to this, and Dr. Diff has also seen this as well. When you start to get into those altitudes, physical altitudes of 2,000 feet and below, that's where you got to be careful with those types of products. The reason why is because you can start to get into negative or at least zero DA conditions. I can assure you that in the tables in the Hellcat, I've actually exceeded the airflow with my car with stock pulleys. That airflow is, I'll just, without getting too technical, 1.5 is, let's say that's your parameter. Anything more than a 1.5 and a certain timing value is going to be attributed to that airflow, regardless of how much more of that than that 1.5 number that there is. So in other words, if the real airflow number is 1.9, it still references that bottom right-hand corner of the timing table at, let's say, 18 degrees of timing. Well, you don't want 18 degrees of timing at that much airflow, but here we are. The car's only remedy to this, and this is some just mind-blowing stuff for me, just in the fact that it can do this kind of thing, is to start yanking timing because of short-term knock, which is going to happen at those timing values. But when you start to exceed that airflow that is in the table and you can only get to a certain timing value and that's it, that's how you can pop a motor. I know that Dr. Diff has seen this firsthand with his customer that had an incognito upper. I think it was an incognito. Anyway, one of the Hellbenders or whatever it's called. Anyway, the thing is that it was yanking like 7 or 8 degrees of timing short-term knock, making less power. Actually saw a car do that at the drag strip last night, by the way. Not going to say who tuned it, but what I will say is that all things considered, I was concerned about that car popping as well. Only because the number it was running was so low, and then Sean got to see another situation like that firsthand, and it all basically points in the same direction, and that is that if you've got the itch to throw pulleys on your car, make sure that you work with somebody like Pike's Performance that knows what they're doing with these cars at low altitudes to make them perform reliably, to make sure that they're going to be durable, but to also be able to work within the parameters of the tune to keep everything in check and safe at those airflow ratio, at those airflow levels. Anyway, just something to consider. Oh, Sean saying, please remind people. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming with. So no such thing as a no tuned pulley add-on for any vehicle, especially in the modern era. Mainly because there's so much going on. You don't know what's going on in the tune. And this is where people really tend to get a little bit, they get the wrong idea. This is where the facts don't really care about your beliefs. And you can believe that there's enough room in the tune The reality is that there's not. Have you any idea what your AFR, your command AFR is for a Hellcat? I'm just going to put this out there real quickly for you. This is how spooky it is for me to see pulleys on a Hellcat or a Red Eye or even a Demon for that matter. Your command, okay, so let me give you an idea. I'm going to talk in terms of AFR, but you know, a lot of times you'll hear me talk about tuning in Lambda and all this other stuff. But I'm going to make it easy in this case. We're just going to talk AFR. Most guys, when they tune supercharged cars, will throw a command AFR of around 12.0. It can be 1190, it can be 1175, it can be 1205, but it's typically going to be somewhere in that 12.0 range, also known as 80 lambda. That's just kind of your default setting. Everybody runs 80, it's safe, it's a known value, 93 octane, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The Hellcat, this is kind of funny. The Hellcat's target AFR, wait for it, 12.7. That's right. 12.7, a number that's typically reserved for naturally aspirated cars. That's what your command AFR is in a Hellcat. And it's only because it's pretty much that efficient. I mean, you can use that number if the timing value is kind of low, and if you've got a knock sensor sensitivity that is on point and will collect that thing up if it starts to get a little bit out of hand due to short-term knock. Fuel quality, basically. Can you imagine these things run on 91 octane with that command AFR, by the way? Scary. So getting back into it, you throw a pulley on that thing at lower altitudes with a car that's commanding, for me anyway, a ridiculously high AFR, and you're relying solely on your knock sensors to keep that thing from popping. Can you see where the problems are going to start? First of all, it's going to go into short-term knock retard. This thing's going to be reeling in timing like a 2-pound trout. Next thing you know, there's no real timing in there, and the car goes slower. What happened? Why ain't it going? The reason why is because it's got such anemic timing values because it's trying not to blow itself sky high. Anyway, I can ride that soapbox straight. The fuck? I can ride that all the way around, so just know that coming into it. HE37 is talking about DA also depends on location. Absolutely it does. Let's see. Max is asking, it's cocky actually. Rooster fighting, kind of a cultural thing down here in Southeast Texas. Let's see, Shawnee's saying, Revlon is really quick to the 330 and 8th mile for a stock boost Hellcat. Solid run last night for you considering the conditions. Yeah, to say the least. I mean, one of the things that I've always been impressed with this car and really Hellcats in general is just how stout they are in the 8th mile and just how quick they are. And, you know, this car's been no slouch, and, you know, with the very little that I've done to it, she seems to be running pretty good. Let's see. Oh, Doc Diff is saying about the HP tuners thing. Yeah, he's saying your beta stable version scanner wasn't reading all your parameters. Correct. Said he had a similar issue with it lately. Had to tune 3 vehicles that week with little crappy toolbox computer tablet thing. What's the deal with it? What's yours doing? The exact same thing. In fact, it's weird because it when it started doing it, it'll log the stuff that it shows. It just doesn't log anything else. So I don't know, man. Scanner has gone completely numero uno crazy. So I just need to basically, I don't know, figure out how to get a hold of HP tuners on Monday or Tuesday. Just say, hey, what's the fix? There's also unexpected exemption fault code that pops up. I don't know, man. All I know is it didn't work, and I was trying to get data on the car last night. In fact, I wanted to get data on the car because it was muggy, hot, sticky outside, humid. I wanted to get data on the car with the new fueling that I added to it, and I mean, obviously the car is running good. I just wanted the data, data nerds like me. I mean, I get all into that and couldn't get it, so it kind of sucked. Let's see. Ken is asking, is octane level more or less important at higher density altitude? I'm going to say it's every bit as important. To me, it's more important because, well, here's the thing. I think at higher altitudes, you can get away with a lower octane, basically because you have less available oxygen. That does not hold true, though, if you have a turbocharger. If you have a turbocharger, you have the same boost all the time. It's just that you got to work the turbo harder to be able to get it. In other words, your spring, it's just going to be harder for the turbo to reach that spring pressure. But octane is every bit important, especially considering the tune. In many cases, you might be throwing more timing at it because, like in the case of a Hellcat, the lower your manifold pressure is, the higher your timing is going to be, and the inverse is also true. So that's assuming a 91 or a 93 octane. So I'm going to say that you need to maintain consistent octane. And if you're running in high density altitude, tune it to optimize your combination on the highest octane that you can find, and that's going to make the most power and be the most consistent. Dr. New saying, agree with Alex. I do the same thing. Yes, you do. Hemihead saying, hey, B, got a new set of 305 Nitto Tri-5Rs on Memorial Day sale. Like it. Seems like they're going to be replaced by the Tri-5 2. Do you know anything about the 2s yet? So here's the thing. I don't have any personal experience, but I do kind of want to try them out. We were noticing quite a few cars at the track last night with them, and if you feel the tire, that tire versus the regular Tri-5R, it's super soft. I mean, it's like the only way I could explain it was almost like a motorcycle tire slick, the way that it felt, kind of pillowy almost. But they look like they hook like a sumbitch. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing it. But I haven't bought any yet, but I can tell you that so far from what I've seen, they work really well. Destroyer Scat saying, sorry, this is not on topic, but what issue did you have with brisk racing spark plugs? Well, I've had a couple of issues with brisks before. We had them with a couple of Hellcats, actually. And what was happening was it's kind of hard to explain because I'm not really sure what was going on with the plug. We had one of the plugs basically just flat out fail. It was not firing at all, and it was creating an issue in tuning the car, as you may imagine. But in fact, we had an entire bank go bad on the same car. Again, these were with the brisks. And so we kind of chalked it up to just, okay, maybe it was just a bad run of spark plugs. It's a manufactured item. Things can go bad, and maybe this is just a bad run. Ordered up more plugs. They ended up doing the exact same thing. And another issue that we had, I think it was with the grounding straps on them. I don't know, I'm going back a little bit farther than just the latest issue that we had. But anyway, just a running series of problems where the plugs just did not perform very well, especially under boosted conditions. That was really where they seemed to just not be able to deal well. And again, could have been a bad run of plugs, not trying to throw Brisk under the bus, but after dealing with that, going, dude, that's not NGK TR7iX, which is like the go-to plug for the, modified Hellcats, or, even the stock plug, which is, I think is 6. I think it's I always get them mixed up if the stock plugs are 6s or 7s, but I know we always use 7s for the modified cars. And I'm just so used to ordering that part number, I just wouldn't know what else to order anymore at this point. In fact, we switched that car that we had, it's painful as it is, switched that to all NGKs and solved every problem that car ever had. And even with the car, and oh, here's the other funny thing. This is what really threw us off. The car ran fine for the first, it made it through a load test, and then it ran fine for maybe 2 wide open throttle pulls. And then after that, done, like totally done. So again, you know, who knows what the problem was, but it was real frustrating because it went from being great to being not running good at all. And let me tell you what that does to you when that car goes from doing really good things on the dyno to really, really bad things. Typically that means it's blown up. So in this case, thank goodness it was just bad plugs, but dude, for about 45 minutes, it was, oh shit. But then, you know, it was like, well, wait a minute. You fire it up and it idles fine. And based on the data, because it would idle fine. It's just under load, it would freak out. It's like, damn, dude, based on the data, everything under partial throttle looked great. How is this thing, what's the deal? And you would see it, you know, right as it would go under, and then it was, okay, is the bypass, you would never think that it would be plugs. It was, is the bypass malfunctioning? What is going on here? All of that basically was going through our heads, and then it was, God, could it be bad set of plugs? What plugs in it brisk? What, they're not NGKs? Get them out of there. And that's basically how that went down. Let's see. Donnie is saying air density decreases exponentially as elevation increases. The largest drop occurs between sea level and 5,000 feet. Well, let's see. Typically, like I say, I mean, it's a 3% on an NA engine, and that's aviation standard. So, yep. Let's see. Donnie saying, also, B Mason, really appreciate the tips. Not a problem. Picked up a book to work on my build, getting ready to do a cam myself. Very nice. Make sure you are patient with that process. And get all Mopar replacement gaskets, please. Ferocious 1980 saying, hey, Mason, how's it hanging? Low and to the left, baby. Ethan saying, what's the 2021 Dodge Cuda rumors? Any thoughts? Nothing on 2021. And the main reason for that is, well, to be honest with you, the LX platform isn't going anywhere. If they're going to do anything with this platform, it's going to be a modified version of that platform. And I mean, look, guys, the jury is still a little bit out as to what they're really going to end up doing with it, because, you know, there were rumors obviously about the Julia platform and the Ghibli platform before, and now they were talking about modifying and re-upping the LX platform even after 2023. But at some point, you would think that there would be a revamp or a re-look or, you know, some kind of a re-something. And we just haven't really seen it yet. And, you know, as far as the CUDA goes and everything else, look, I'll be honest with you. I think the CUDA has more or less, that's like this MacGuffin, really. I mean, the CUDA is really just something to kind of carry a plot narrative along here. I don't really see that even being a thing, to be honest with you. I've even talked to guys that are kind of in the know, and they said, yeah, I know the CUDA is the next Halo car, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be this, that, and whatever. Look, the problem is that they've kind of stepped on their own business coming into this. And what I mean by that is, look, they had an opportunity with the 1320. Love the 1320 for all it's got, but, you know, where that Demon offered up a different supercharger and more power and, you know, some gadgets that were pretty cool, the 1320 didn't. Still uses the same 392 that everybody else is using, which is fine. It's a great engine. It's a lot of fun to drive. But without a 426, or without a bump in power, or without an aluminum block, or without something to make it great, it kind of fell on deaf ears. And unfortunately, Mopar is going to have to pull something straight out of their ass to make a CUDA, or a revised Viper, or whatever is going to be coming down the chute, so to speak. They're going to have to do that in like the most dramatic fashion possible, because if they don't, we're all going to be left kind of hanging a little bit, left wanting a little bit. And the real problem is this. Look, at the end of the day, it's the Hellcat that's the yardstick, not the red eye. And the Demon, it's more of a sideshow oddity. So they need to make another benchmark. And that's the toughest thing you can possibly do if you're Mopar at this stage of the game. You did such a great job with the Hellcat that everybody guns after it. And if it's faster than a Hellcat, then it's deemed to be fast. There's cars that tried and failed, like the ZL1. There's cars that have tried and maybe surpassed it, but missed the mark in spirit, like the GT500. And then you've got the forced successor of the Red Eye, which hasn't really proven itself to be far and away better than just a winked at Hellcat, especially when you option it the same way that you could option the Red Eye. So because of all of that, and because you've got the TRX coming out, and because you've got the Hellcat Durango coming out, they're just things to keep you happy for the meantime. But as far as anything else with two doors coming out that's going to be effective, like the Hellcat, in terms of the CUDA, Viper, some other Fury or whatever they're going to put together, I just don't see it really anytime soon. And that's the unfortunate part of it. So anyway, back to it. Let's see. HU37 saying the other thing is that DA corrections are different with naturally aspirated versus boosted engines. Many DA corrections don't take that into account. Actually, you've got to be careful when you say NA versus boosted. In that case, it's boosted turbocharger, not boosted positive displacement or centrifugal. TU is asking, AOB, did you see the official leak photo of the 2021 Mustang Mach-1? I haven't. I need to go sniffing that thing out. What's your guess on the power numbers? Probably not that far off from where they are right now. I would be willing to guess that you're going to be seeing something around 450-ish, 455-ish. I'm sorry, 465, 475. It's going to be closer to, maybe closer to the GT. I just don't know if it's going to be into that GT350 range. Let me rephrase this. It was my understanding that the Mach-1, and this is showing you how much I haven't paid attention to it. It was my understanding that the Mach-1 was going to take the place of like the Bullet Mustang, but it was going to have a bump in power. Now they're talking about that car being the next GT350. If that's the case, then does the Voodoo make the cut? That's the other question that I have, because Voodoo been having some problems, and the longevity of that thing is kind of in question. So if they've made changes to the engine to make it a little bit more durable or robust, whatever the case is, fantastic. But I just don't know enough about it yet, so I need to educate myself on that, and I need to do it quickly. Sinister Red Eye is asking, what RPM do I normally launch at? Usually around 1300 RPM. Stock, and will be on my Tri-5s till I get my 17s and Mickeys. Yeah, launch at about 1300 to 1500. You'll be good. Donald is saying, B, I got an unlocked PCM with Diablo Tune. Can I change to HP tuners? Yes, you can. 1320 saying, love the chats, but I got to go. Good seeing you, brother. Thanks for hanging out, man. Appreciate it. Oh, Destroyer Gray said, hit the like button, y'all. Yeah, absolutely. Hit that like button, man. Steve's saying, might be off topic, but from the YouTube channels I've been watching, Texas is just full of awesome cars. Yeah, we got some crazy stuff down here. It's freaking crazy, the cars that show up at those cars and coffee meets around Houston. Man, you would be surprised what all shows up down here. We got a lot of fast cars all over the state of Texas. Lots of mile cars, lots of roll race guys too. And man, we're talking a lot of stuff that would kind of blow your mind. I mean, even the import scene down here, there's some crazy fast stuff running around. Let's see. 76239 saying, had a question. What are tips I would give on someone buying a used car? What to look for before buying? Main thing is look for mods. If you see a bunch of mods, don't buy the car. You just don't know who did the install, and you just don't know who did the tuning to go along with it, which makes me to my next point. Tuning. Unless you know the history of the car, it's going to be real hard to justify buying something that you know was really beaten on. So try to find something that was maybe a lease turn in. Look for something that's pretty much stock. As far as, you know, what else to look for with the modern cars, try to know the guy or gal that's selling it. If they're a car guy or if they're a car girl, more than likely they were taking pretty good care of that thing. And I would say that is really more to the point. They all have pretty much the same build quality, which some will say is questionable. But I will say this, things to look out for the Hellcats: supercharger snout bearings. Build dates, I want to say, are somewhere around, let me think about this, April to May of 2015. So May, June, July, August, and September, I think for those 5 months, they may have had subpar bearings in the blower. I think the manufacturer changed something and they thought it was better, it ended up being worse. Bummer. But those would be the build dates I would look out for the Hellcats. But aside from that, the later Hellcats, 17, 18, 19, all have better drive shafts. So for me, if you're looking for a used Hellcat, depending on what you're looking for, I went pretty specific with this girl. But 17 and a half and up, you should be good. So 17 March build date and up, should be in good shape. Sean saying, do you think a Hellcat would run better with a 12.0 to 11.8 AFR? It is a known fact that they do. Sean is asking, would you rather have dry air and high DA or moist air and low DA? I'd rather have high DA with low or no humidity. Where is the balance? Grains versus density altitude. Maybe you can touch on that. So one of the things is grains and humidity. The higher the grains, the higher the humidity. Basically, it's a measurement of just the amount of water in the atmosphere. I'm not sure what the grains were last night, but I can assure you they were pretty high. And I've run the car in grains of 135 to 142. Typically a low grain day would be, or a good grain day, I should say, would be 50, 45, maybe 55. So that'll give you an idea as far as, you know, when we're talking about, you know, humidity, it's humidity that really kills it, because you just have all this air in the, or water in the air, just taking up all that sweet oxygen's place. So, you know, it would be tougher to have low humidity in a high DA, just because that's going to be hot. So it's going to kind of screw you up as far as, you know, hot spark table. But I don't know, track would be sticky. And to be honest with you, as long as the temps aren't above, say, 80 in those conditions, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So anyway, that's kind of how I see that one. Let's see. Oh, Coda's saying his Durango's got to have suspension work. I can understand that, and a tune-up for sure. Let's see. Ferocious is saying, there is a local dealer selling a Charger SRT8 2013 with a Vortex supercharger, 100 grand on the odometer, asking 25 grand. Should I jump on it or run away? Turn around and run away from that one. Let's see. Peter is asking, hey, seems like a dumb question, but what is your opinion to put a Hellcat supercharger on a 2019 392? You know, I tell you something, if you're going to do that, oh, Sean already jumped on it. If you're going to go that route, just trade the car in and buy a Hellcat. I know that that might not be the words that you want to hear, but unfortunately, okay, so can you do it? Yes, of course you can. In fact, a lot of people don't realize this, but it was a 392 that was the development engine for the Hellcat. So, you know, a little trivia for you. But then again, that engine also had a lot wider ring gap, different pistons, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my point here is this. 392 is a fantastic naturally aspirated engine, but if you're going to put boost on it and you really want to turn the wick up on the thing like you're going to want to do, you've got to do two different things. One is you got to pull the engine, disassemble it, throw ring gap at it at least. I would at least throw a set of pistons on it as well. And then from there, you can put whatever blower you want. I mean, you can put a Hellcat blower on it and do fine and Whipple or what have you. And just understand that now we're starting to talk about money. And it's the unfortunate part of this is that there is a money component to it. The more you want to try to make that 392 run like a Hellcat, the cheaper buying a Hellcat will be in light of buying the blower, buying the fuel system, plumbing everything up, tuning it, prepping the engine for boost. By the way, you've got a transmission that's not really going to hang with it anyway. All of these things start to add up. Now, are there guys that have done it? Yeah, there are. There's also a lot of guys that have run, 550, 570 horsepower with the HP70 transmission. Here's the twist. Those have been with Pro Chargers. You start talking about positive displacement superchargers, you're talking about instant torque, instant boost, kind of like running nitrous. The problem with that is that the transmission can manage that power when it's not having to overcome inertia, which means at the farther end of the power spectrum. You start hitting that transmission with a sticky tire low like that, low in the RPM range, it's trying to overcome inertia, and it's got all this power that it's trying to deal with for a long period of time, relatively speaking. That's really more to the point, is will the trans hold it? So you got a lot working against you. If you're thinking about going that route, don't take the bait. You'd be better off saving up a little bit more money and buying a car that's already there. I'll tell you what, guys, hang on just a second. I have got to grab something to drink. I'm about to be parched. Talk amongst yourselves. I will be right back. Hang on. Hang on just a minute. Let's get out to the truck. Dying of thirst over here. Got my voice all gravelified. All right. We're back. So anyway, hopefully that answers that question. Let's see, HE37, my car has a centrifugal supercharger. I'd like to have the boost come on sooner by using a smaller pulley, but limiting peak boost. Any thoughts on this? Well, I mean, you can technically install a waste or a pressure release valve, but that wouldn't do you much good. I mean, that's you can flatten the boost curve with something like that, but I mean, you just be kind of wasting it. You're going to be running into more parasitic drag, so your power, even though your boost is going to be flat, your power is going to fall off because you'll have higher parasitic losses. So with those type of superchargers, I wouldn't do that. Just throw a smaller pulley on it. But just make sure that the rest of the package can manage it if you're going to go that route. In fact, I've heard of guys trying that before, and it never This is, back in the day though, but it never really panned out like what they thought. And the idea was to take a centrifugal supercharger and try to limit it to, say, 14 pounds of boost. But every time that they would do that, you would crack the valve, you're venting boost, but again, it was a situation where, but your parasitic losses were still high. Dead Skeeter. And you weren't feeding anything. You're just feeding the atmosphere free boost. Sean's saying I ran a 161 60-foot with full weight Hellcat 315/30 Nitto NT05s. I like them. Big burnout. Yeah, you got to get them hot. Sinister Red Eye saying happy Saturday, Mr. Mason. What's up? Was wondering what you're normally launching at and what you think works best. I'm stock and will be on Tri 5s till I get my 17s and Mickey. So if you're on 55s or Tri 5s, I would launch it at about 1200 RPM, and again, just go with that cadence. Just kind of feed the power in. Don't just light switch it. Feed the power in, and again, the cadence kind of goes like this. Like this is the floor here. It's just, that's kind of your cadence. It's 1001. That's going to be your cadence on radials. Just feed the power in over a 1 second time frame. Once you get your other wheels and tires on, it's going to be a little bit quicker, and you'll feel the difference. You're going to come into it a little bit quicker, but I still don't light switch the car. It's rare when I do. But when I do, it doesn't really ever, the car doesn't ever launch any harder or do anything differently. And just keep in mind that there is an amount of time that you are not, you're passing through partial throttle to get to wide open throttle too. So I guess the reason why I'm saying that is there's some things in the tune that are going, you've got bobble torque, which is, reeling timing back and things like that. It's one of the reasons why if you just light switch the throttle, it doesn't always make the car launch a lot harder. It's actually better to keep some, from a tuning standpoint, this is what I've discovered, it's good to keep some of that bobble torque in there because it helps the car launch. I've actually been able to out 60-foot cars with a lot of work done to the tune, only to find out it didn't help the car launch at all. So anyway, keep that cadence down, you'll be in good shape. Destroyer saying, I agree the 1320 could have been more amazing than it is. First factory twin turbo would have been a smash. Bill it low end and go. Still love it till I build it. Well, and that's the thing. It's a sweet package. Don't get me wrong. In fact, there's a lot of guys that'll argue that 1320 is the ultimate grassroots hot rod, and I'm not going to argue with that. Realistically, I think it's a great car. It just, the timing couldn't have been worse. I would have hoped it would have gone something like this. 1320 get released first, then release the Demon. Only because so many people were grassroots racing Scat Packs and obviously normal Hellcats, but so many, I see so many Scat Packs at the drag strip. That to me would have been ideal. And then release the Demon with the gadgets and everything else with a little bit extra power and the buttons and all that. But I would have liked to have seen something else done with that 1320. And not that that would ever keep me from buying one, but you got to remember that after the Demon, and again, the Demon introduced us to the cool down feature, to the high octane modes, which would have been really cool for an NA car, bump and power, high octane mode, all of that. But it gave us a bump in power that the NA guys, as usual, didn't get. So kind of a bummer there. Let's see. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Dang it. Blew past something here. Time out, time out, time out. What happened? Time out. I blew past the Here we go. Riff saying, sup, y'all? HU37 saying, I don't think FCA will do anything with models or platforms until better technology pushes them to do something. Your thoughts? Well, I mean, you know, you look at the whole COVID thing right now, and that's going to throw things a little bit into a tailspin. And then you start to take a look at, well, the simple fact that the Challenger's selling really well, and it's got a good track record of sales. It's not really technology. I mean, the technology is there for them to do whatever they want. It's just that, well, dang, I mean, it's hard when your profits are so high based off of a platform that's probably already been paid off, or at least the licensing agreements are easy to cover over and over and over. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what would force their hand. Again, the market is saying leave things as they are, and rightfully so. A lot of people love these cars how they are. So I don't know. I mean, you tell me, what would it take for you from a phantom manufacturer? What kind of product would it take for you to get out of a Hellcat and into that car, or out of a 1320 or a Scat Pack and into that car? What would it take? You know, would it be something like the Supra? Would it be something along the lines of, say, a Viper that was a little bit more mainstream focused? I don't know. That's the thing. I mean, there's so many opinions on it, but the market itself has kind of laid out what the reality of the situation is. So there you go with that one. Oh, Shawnee's hanging out with Rift. Let's see. 1320 saying, what's up to Rift? Let's see. Catalyst 99 is saying, is it difficult to turn a V6 into a 4.3 stroker? There's one dude on YouTube who has one, and it sounds sweet. It's not so much difficult. I mean, it's just as hard as pulling an engine out, stripping it, machining it, assembling it, reinstalling it, tuning it. I mean, it's all the same. I guess the question is it worth it? And it's all about that paper, man. I mean, look, if we're talking about money here, and that's really more to the point, is it financially worth it? You know, especially when you start to look at the fact that, you know, you're not going to get a ton out of messing with a V6. It will always be a V6. And you could have taken that money plus the car, gone to your Dodge dealership, found you a Scat Pack that will annihilate any V6 that's out there. Unless you are just a 6-gun kind of guy, it's not financially the way that most guys would go. However, there are 6-cylinder loyalists, and if you fall into that camp, it would make sense. I mean, it's falling in line with your ideology. It's just that, you know, the majority of the market doesn't really go that route. Although I will say this, I would like to see a bump in power for my V6 brethren. Ripped is saying, my custom settings on my Hellcat stay there when I turn the car off and back on, but my friend's 2016 Hellcat does not. Is there a reason for that? The newer cars will, I believe, default to the custom settings if the custom settings are what was left on the car when you got out of it and turned it off. The older cars don't do that. They have a hard default, and then you have to tell it what you want it to do when you get in the car. I believe is how they work, I think. Unless it's a demon with drag mode, then you have to put it in drag mode. Let's see. Sean is hanging out with... Shawnee's saying, Brian, have a drink for the working man. Speaking of working, oh, yeah, I want to talk to you guys, too. Body mounts, or I should say cab mounts for the truck. So I'm going to switch gears completely here. Do a little old pickup truck talk here for a second. So I'm learning here. I am learning that I don't know shit about old ass trucks. You would think that these things would be super easy and C-spot run simple. The problem is if you're used to it, they are, and are as easy to work on and as agrarian as a lawnmower. But there are some things that you're going to have to know coming into this, which is basically, it doesn't matter what you spend, or it doesn't matter what you pay for when you're talking about these older trucks. They all need a shitload of work. So I did body mounts on the truck, and this is what I wanted to show you guys. I have props, by the way, for this. So these are the rear cab mount bolts, and I did the rears. You have 3 different pair of cab mounts. You have one at the very front, which is, you know, more like the fender and core support mount. You've got, but then you have the actual cab mounts, which there are 4 of, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Here's what I wanted to show you guys. This is one of the rear cab mount bolts, and look at that. You can see how it's kind of, you know, it's pretty jacked up. It's bent. Rust has taken its toll. This one's a little bit easier to see. There you go. And that's pretty much what was holding that cab to the frame. By the way, the frame on this C25 is in impeccable shape. Thing's pretty stout, but everything else that's bolted to it is turning into liquid shit. So anyway, that's what I was up to today, was replacing those rears. And let me show you guys this too. This is kind of fun. So this is one of the front bolts. I had to cut it off because, well, I couldn't remove it because that crush collar, there's the condition of the crush collar on that front mount. It is basically never coming off of there. It's not really rust welded. It's just kind of pinched in place. Pretty nice. Anyway, here's one of the rears. And you can see this is supposed to be solid. It's actually not. So I had to get all new mounts for it. Anyway, that's what I was up to with the truck. Wanted to get you guys up to speed on that. I know a lot of you guys have been asking about how's the truck doing, what's going on with the truck. The idea, the cab, you know, it's isolated with these old rubber mounts, and this is one of the original mounts. You can see all crusty and everything else this thing is. This is a, you know, for practical purposes, this is a 50-year-old rubber mount, and that is what it ends up looking like. And they just get wallowed out and end up looking pretty sucky. And so I'm going with energy suspension, polyurethane mounts, and, you know, that's the way to do it. But there's some weird things that come with these trucks, or rather I should say what doesn't come with these trucks, because energy suspension is saying use OEM crush collars or these crush bushings, and it's like, I can't really use that. So anyway, LMC truck to the rescue. But this is what happens, man, when you don't maintain your stuff for 50 years. All vehicles have to have maintenance, bushings, you know, anything greasable, anything whatever. You know, obviously these old trucks just, they didn't fall in line with a lot of that, so I'm replacing that. But I did that, and I also readjusted the driver's side door. So we got a straight cab now, which is great, but I've got to get those crush bushings and finish up the install and get it ready to get to Dr. Diff, because, bro, we need a transmission. We'll go through some other mods we're going to do, but anyway. Let's see, Destroyer 1320, and everybody, oh, he's saying that Chandler, Arizona track opens next Saturday. Can't wait, need some content. There we go, I like it. Be looking forward to that one. Let's see, oh, Rip is saying I actually beat a modded GTR last night, which made me happy. Yeah, I mean, not every GTR is a 9-second car, you know that, right? Yeah, we got some that go to the drag strip here in Houston that, I mean, they're quick, but, you know, they're always neat to look at. Ryan is saying, I wonder if the pedal commander would be any help for launching. Yeah, and Shawnee's saying that he's got a pedal commander. You think it reduces feel if it's turned up too much. Yeah, that is true. I don't know if it would be really worth messing with a pedal commander to help you for launching, because you're working within a cadence. So And you're also, you got to remember, you're not dealing with a throttle that's overly aggressive. And the problem that you have isn't applying the power quick enough. The problem that you have is applying the power and having the car light the tires up. So I would say that, there's no real benefit to the pedal commander for drag strip use, but on the street, they're a freaking riot. So wholeheartedly recommend them, especially if that's all you're going to do to the car. Because of warranty concerns and things like that, just throw the pedal commander at it and have a ball. In fact, I've even thought about putting a pedal commander on mine just to play with driver command torque on the fly. But then again, I can put it in eco mode, or I can, just put it in sport mode, and it's kind of the same thing. So there's that. Or I can put it in 500 horse mode. These things are a riot, man. You can do all kinds of stuff with these cars. Sean, he's saying Taser cooldown feature was helping me with the Hellcat today. A nice little mod for drag strip and Hellcat people. And Riff says, my Hellcat burn box cooldown feature seems to kill my battery a lot, even though it's supposed to stop before it does. And then Sean saying, my battery hates it. I need to get a strong, lightweight battery. Apparently Nick is going to be getting some batteries over at Archangel. So I would say start harassing him within the next week or two. As far as that thing pissing off your battery, it can happen for sure. And the main thing the best advice I can give you with the Taser cooldown feature is this: don't run your feature on high. So don't run the fan high or fan and pumps. Don't run them on high for more than, I would say, 3 minutes. At the most, 5 minutes, but stick with 3 minutes. Get that cool down started, and then kick it over to fans and pump on low, and let that run for no more than maybe 10 minutes, and then kill it at that point. That typically will get you to a pretty nice spot. I just don't like going much farther than that. Number one, you don't need to. But two, if you do, the problem that you run into is that you can drain the battery down. And the big problem with that is, so some jump boxes, some jump boxes don't do well with the underhood points, and you've got to hit them from the battery. And, if your battery's dead, you can't open your trunk. You can maybe crawl through the back, but if you have a rear seat delete, you can't do that. So just stuff to consider. Let's see. Oh, Rick is saying, I want to get a relatively older Bronco, but I have noticed that they went up in value a lot. Yeah, tell me about it. All of them have lately, and there's been a big resurgence of them, and it kind of sucks because I used to be able to get those things for a 2 Snickers bar and a pack of smokes. You could get a Bronco and extra parts to go with it. And it's just not like that anymore, man. Those things have gone up in value, kind of like Wagoneers, vehicles that were literally disposable, or they're coming back and getting a lot of value. So just never know. And that's the other thing too, is, I wish I would have bought 100 of them. Well, yeah, but if they're all rusted out and beat the hell out of, it makes it difficult to, work on them. So really, if you can find one, good on you. Get the best one you can find. Let's see. Catalyst 99 saying 49 grand for a Hellcat with 12,000 miles. Good deal, or it depends. It depends. But if you get there, you look at it, it's extremely clean car. If it's a one-owner car, you can talk to the owner. If it's a private party, that's always better. But for the most part, that's about the going rate. I could probably say that you would want to bust him down maybe a couple of grand on that. Somewhere around there. At least try to get 5% for yourself on that deal. But if you got the cash on hand, paperwork all looks good, I'd say go for it. But just don't overpay for it. The good thing though is it's a Hellcat and it'll definitely keep its value. Sean's checking out. Say good night, D. Good night, Sean. Have a good one. Oh, Sean, he's saying, yeah, that's a pretty reasonable price. Say he paid $49 for a car with 30,000 miles on it last August. It's a really clean car that Sean got though. And again, that's the thing. It really does depend on the car and on the owner and on everything else, but still. Let's see. And it also depends on where you live too. Certain parts of the country are going to be a little bit stingier than other areas. Kind of supply and demand on that one. Rip is saying he got his with less than 8 for 48. Destroy 1320 saying, gotta run. Y'all catch you on the next one later, B. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, brother. HE37 saying, at Catalyst, supercharged V6, it runs low 12s. If I added a couple of pounds of boost, I could hold my own against stock Scat Pack. Would I do it again? No, juice just not worth the squeeze. And that's the overlying kind of census on that, isn't it? I mean, when you start to look at just everything you have to do to keep up, it's a lot of money to just keep up, man. And yeah, it's cool, but it's cool, again, like a sideshow, from a sideshow standpoint. And the other side is, you know, if you decide to get rid of the car, what are you going to do with all the extra stuff? That's the thing. You got to find, it's a pretty close-knit group. I know that, but you got to find the right buyer for those parts, man. That's the tough part. Edward is saying, finally got my car running. Awesome. Then yesterday I was in a drive-thru and started running like shit. CEL light on, limp mode, P2172, throttle actuator control. Sudden high airflow detected. That means significant vacuum leak or a sensor went nuts. Something fall off of it? I mean, seriously, was there like a major exhaust, major intake leak or something like that? Major vacuum leak? HU37 saying track's finally opening in New York and New Hampshire, although the DA sucks in in the Texas heat. The drag racing season's only 7 months. Yep. Sinister's asking, do you know how or do you think there was any gains running the killer chiller option on the red eye, or is it taking more power running the AC compressor while going down the track? No, actually, when you go to wide open throttle, my understanding is that it shuts down the compressor just like it always does. The idea is to get the temperature down in the reservoir and in the system so that when you make the hit, the system is already at a lower temperature and it can absorb the heat better. But no, my understanding is the way that system works is when you do go to watt, it kills the clutch in that thing because of RPM limitations for the pump itself. So that is my understanding of it anyway. Edward Schaefer is saying, and that's the same for any modern car, they all kill the ACs when you go to watt. I'll tell you what, and nothing was more apparent on that than with the Gen 2 Vipers. And the funny thing too is that the spring, for any of you Viper guys may know this or had experienced this, some of the GTSs, it was funny, had a so stupid. So the blend door for the defroster and the normal AC is on one circuit, one vacuum circuit, and it's easy as hell to see. You pop the hood on a Viper and it's on the driver's side, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, for whatever reason, guys would work on it and they would screw up this line, and so it would be stuck with defroster all the time. Anyway, the actuator was a little aggressive in some of those cars. And so if you had the AC on and you were driving the car and you floored it, in some cases, the drop in vacuum, because it was a drop in vacuum that would kick the thing over to the defroster when you turn the switch on the blend door. Well, the car, if a sure sign that there was a problem in some of the cars was that the car would be kind of stuck in defroster mode. Anyway, that just kind of brought up a funny old memory with one of the cars that I remember driving, go to Watt with the air on, and you would hear it go clunk, and it would just start having a defroster. Anyway, dumb Viper things. Edward's saying, replace throttle body, did relearn, new map sensor, smoke test, no leaks, ran every test I could with the snap-on scan tool. The only other thing I can think of, would be a bad throttle body, and I've seen that happen before. But it's kind of rare. I know you did a throttle relearn. Try doing this. Try, if you can get your hands on another throttle body, try seeing if you get the same result with a different throttle body. I've seen some funky stuff with throttle bodies before, but I mean, we're only talking, I gotta sit here and think about this, twice for sure, maybe a third time. I'll reserve the right to pull a third, but for sure I've seen that happen a couple of times, 2 times, something very similar to that anyway. I would check that out. I would look into that. Maybe try a different throttle body. And that was the fix for sure on one of the cars. I'm not sure what ended up fixing the other one, but it would, if the lightning bolt, that lightning bolt warning light would come on, and it was funny because I rented it. It was on a 2014 Challenger 6-speed car, as a matter of fact. Rip is saying, I was lucky enough when I bought my Hellcat used for 48 grand with 8,000 miles on it that the last owner left a card in the glove box. And when I met him, he was an older gent and never drove it hard. That's pretty cool, actually. And in perfect condition. It's funny, it's kind of like my car. My car had 5,700 miles on it when I bought it. And I'm not kidding when I say this. I don't think the trunk was ever opened. During the guy's tenure of being the steward of my car, I don't think the trunk was ever open. Nobody had ever sat in the back seat. I don't know how many times the passenger door had been open. I mean, I think the guy just drove it, on the weekend, every once in a while, would take the car out, play around with it, and then take it home and put it back in the garage. And that was pretty much the car's life for, 4 years, 5 years? Crazy, too. Let's see. Speaking of crazy SRT8 saying, I've thought about the pedal commander, but the throttle response is pretty decent in SRTs, and I don't see the need. They don't get you quicker time, so why'd you suggest them? I suggest them for a couple of reasons. One, so I got turned on to pedal commanders with my E63. Had a 2009 W211 E63 with the M156 V8. Loved the car to death. And a buddy of mine actually owned it before I did. And one of the fun things about the pedal commander is you can kind of dial in the throttle response of the car just based on your attitude. So I put one in the Mercedes, I put one in his BMW, I think I put one in his wife's Land Rover Sport. Anyway, long story short, they're kind of neat because, it's a little bit of a novelty. I get it. It's a gadget, it's a gizmo, and I'm a sucker for some of that kind of stuff. But in its softest setting, it makes cruising kind of nice. Like, it makes long distance travel nice if you're not using, the cruise control. It just makes the car to where, you know, inputs into the throttle really don't matter a whole lot. It just makes it kind of numb. If you want it to be aggressive, you kick up the aggression on the pedal commander, and it serves as the same thing as ramping up driver command torque when you're tuning the car. In other words, for every, say, centimeter of throttle travel, you may get, let's say, a centimeter of throttle blade opening, just for illustrative purposes here. Pedal commander, you throw that driver command torque, or you make it more sensitive, as some people will say it. Just make it more aggressive. Now, for every centimeter of accelerator travel, if you had a centimeter of throttle blade opening before, let's say you get a centimeter and a half, and it just makes it feel peppier underfoot, and that's kind of fun. You know, it's a neat thing. So it's just something to play with, and a lot of guys like it. Some guys use it as a, you know, means to be able to launch the car easier. They say it's easier to launch it if it's got a more aggressive throttle to it. You know, I don't know. Okay, I mean, if it makes you feel better, then if the results are real, then it's a real thing. Who am I to judge, right? So those are some reasons why I like it, but it makes the car kind of fun to drive, and I like that kind of stuff. I dig that kind of stuff. Rift is asking, what is the best way to burp the system after I put my 180 thermostat in? Well, the best way I did mine, how did I do mine? I just left the can open and let the thing run for a little bit, let it get to temperature, watched it, took it out for a drive, came back, checked it out, filled it up a little bit more, and it was done. So I kind of took the old school approach and didn't really overthink too much. Didn't mess with any bleed screws or anything like that. I just filled it, watched it, checked it. I didn't vacuum, fill it or anything like that. I mean, I literally did just the dumb route, and it worked out fine. So I'd say go that route. Catalyst is saying, is it really true that Hellcat can get 25 miles per gallon in eco mode on the highway? You don't even need to put it in eco mode to get those kind of mileage numbers. I used to knock down 25 in sport mode on road trips with this thing. With a 309 gear, it'll be like 23, 24 on the highway, staying around 70 miles an hour, 75 maybe. And that's even with a 309 gear. So yeah, they can knock down some pretty decent fuel economy as long as your foot's not in it. And of course, in eco mode makes it really easy because it's kind of like having a pedal commander that's numbed. That's what eco mode does, and works out great. I love it. It's the best of all worlds. Rip is saying his best is 23. Yep. We're saying also, will it throw a code if I put a 180 thermostat in there before I tune it? Nah, not at all. Brian's checking in. He's saying, sad feeling coronavirus victims lost their jobs. Let's see. I don't know what he's talking about. Something about comes from Indonesia. What the hell? Anyway, I don't know what that's all about. Donald's saying, I put Kooks long tubes on my 392, got a green tune, feels good down low, not up top though. I'm saving my pennies for a cam. I agree with what you said about them, plus they're a pain in the ass to put on. Yep, for sure on that. And yeah, long tubes do great down low, man, but I'm telling you, not necessarily great for making power up top, but that's with the stock cam. Go with an aftermarket cam, and that's a completely different story altogether. Because it's going to need it for that scavenging. Rich saying, oh, by the way, got his Hellcat dyno so I can get the baseline number before I put the Diablo Sport tune on there. And then the Hemi Fever tune and got 655. Very cool. Which I thought was a pretty good number for how humid and hot it was out. And that's the other thing, man. It has been gross down here. Like I said, we got hail on Thursday. We got, you know, just muggy ass skeeter weather down here like you wouldn't believe. So yeah, it's been a little bit nutty, and you know, I gotta tell you, not necessarily the greatest for the old racing, pulling numbers out of cars and things like that. But I will tell you this, taking your car to the track now, this is just kind of a, you know, just as an aside, my PSA here, taking your car to the track now is what allows you to be able to cover numbers later in the year, like October, November, December, January. That's when these cars really wake up. It's getting the seat time now, learning the car now, understanding what it's going to act like, understanding track prep, understanding car prep, what tire pressures work best. All of that, this is when you find those things out. Most of the tracks this time of year really won't be overly booked. Now, I know that with Corona and all that other stuff, there's a lot of, you know, pent up need to get to the drag strip. A lot of that will fade though now that the tracks are opening back up and things are looking a lot better, and you can get the practice time, you can get your play time in, get your data logs in now. Learn your car, because once the temperatures start to drop and these things start to pick up, that's when you're going to be able to really take that experience that you have and start having it pay off for you. Riv say it's been so humid that he feels dizzy. I know about that, brother. Trust me. Say he's curious about the difference is going to be from the Can Diablo Sport 91 tune and the Hemi Fever tune for the transmission and the motor. There's going to be some differences for sure. I would say that, you know, you're going to have some data log exchanging back and forth, but the Can Diablo tune, I mean, it's a can tune. It's going to have to deal with a lot of, you know, different fuel qualities and atmospheric conditions, things like that. So it's not going to be optimized. It'll be better than stock, but not near optimized for what you'll be doing with the car. Not even close. Let's see. He's saying, but I really think I'm going to go with somebody else tuning after Hemi Fever. I have no problem personally with Sean at Hemi Fever, but he does not seem to answer me. Yeah, I mean, I know the guy's pretty busy, and I know he gets hammered on by the truck guys too. So, not, you know, making an excuse for him. I just know that he's got a lot going on, and but yeah, I mean, you can always reach out to Dr. Diff. He can take care of you for sure. I'm positive of that. So, you know, a lot of good things going on with these cars. A lot of good things going on with, you know, with just how much experience guys have now with the Hellcat platform. I would say that, you know, as long as you're going with somebody who speaks fluent Mopar, you'll be in good shape. Saying, I wish I could just get a better answer from him every so often than a yes or no. Yeah, I get it. I understand completely, man. These guys are tough to get a hold of, that's for sure. But at any rate, guys, well, sorry for the first part of that show, the one that I deleted. That thing kind of went in a weird way. So I apologize to any of you guys that saw that, man. That was just really weird. But you never know, man. It's the internet. You know, weird shit happens. Weird people show up. But we are coming up on about an hour and 45 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and check out. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Thank you all very much for the support. Wouldn't do it without you. So want to say God bless. Thank you all very much, and we will catch y'all on the next one. That is a wrap on this one, guys. Y'all take it easy. Adios.